Simeon Nikolov is already being called one of the best setters in the world. He is only 19, his highlights rack up millions of views, and every match Bulgaria plays gives people another reason to talk about his phenomenal talent. But once you put those huge numbers aside and watch his game from the technical camera, the picture becomes much more complicated. So is the Bulgarian wonderkid really already among the best players at his position, or is the hype around him still running ahead of the actual quality of his volleyball? Right now we are going to break down how Nikolov's game has changed after his first season with the professional club and how close he really is to becoming the best setter in the world. I was incredibly curious to see what had changed in Moni's game after his debut season in professional club volleyball. Just a year ago, his performance left us with plenty of questions, and I really wanted to find the answers. That is exactly what I am going to do now. I was especially interested to see how his attacking style would change. Nikolov himself said that he had no intention of giving it up and wanted to keep developing that part of his game, because attacking is exactly what makes him unique. At the beginning of the season in Russia, it looked like he was still an unstoppable attacking force at the net. But later on, the situation started to look different. Most likely, the Russian Super League analysts simply did not think it was necessary at first to study the Bulgarian setters' games in American college volleyball and with the national team in detail. As the season went on, Nikolov's attacking efficiency started to drop, and then the number of his attacking attempts went down as well. That was genuinely concerning because at one point it started to feel like he might gradually turn into a regular setter. However, during the bronze medal series against Zenit St. Petersburg, his attacking potential started showing up again. And I am not even talking about the highlights here, I am talking about actual efficiency. His attacks put points on the scoreboard and gave the entire team an energy boost. After the 2025 friendly tournament in Poland, I said that once Moni found the right balance in how often he attacked, he would become a massive headache for absolutely any opponent. He still has not found that balance, but he continues to search for it, which is definitely encouraging. He does not attack as often now, and he is also trying to score with his non-dominant hand to catch the opponent off guard. So far, it is far from perfect, and many of those setter dumps do not work. That is not surprising, considering that he mostly used direct attacks before, and opponents are now regularly expecting them. The same applies to the Grankin move, which Nikolov has started overusing. Pretty much everyone has seen that viral clip from the match against Zenit, including the analysts working for the other national teams. That is why, out of all his attempts to recreate that highlight during the Volleyball Nations League, only one was successful, which, you have to admit, is hardly an outstanding result. For comparison, Japanese setter Fukatsu has already pulled off the same move twice during this VNL season. In any case, I hope Moni does not give up his aggressive style of play, especially now when this part of his game is helping create more space for his hitters. To put it simply, he needs to play with more swagger. Those who follow his game regularly will understand what I mean. When he performs attacking actions too casually, it often leads to ineffective decisions. But when he puts emotion, passion and that competitive edge into the play, everything works much better. But we should not forget that we are talking about a setter first and foremost, so we need to discuss the most important part of his position, his setting. When I watched the regular broadcasts, everything seemed more or less clear to me. However, once I rewatched Bulgaria's matches using the technical footage, I had to make a few changes to the script for this video. In my previous breakdowns, I said that Moni had problems connecting with the outside hitters, both on the pipe and on attacks from Zone 4. And while the issue with his sets to Zone 6 has more or less been fixed, his sets to the far pin are still coming up short. Before I simply accepted that as a fact, but now I have found a fairly logical explanation. If you look at the matches from the first week of the Volleyball Nations League, you can see that Nikolov was setting almost entirely with his wrists. You might wonder what is wrong with that. The problem was that he simply did not have enough power to push the ball all the way to the antenna. The same thing also happened quite often on his back sets. Let's say he was trying to fool the block by showing the same setting motion. That would be understandable. But Moni was doing exactly the same thing on emergency and out-of-system sets, when the setter's main job is simply to deliver a comfortable, hittable ball to the attacker, so they can challenge the inevitable multiple block. With that in mind, I started rewatching the matches from the second week. And surprisingly enough, Nikolov had already started using his elbows much more actively when setting, which instantly increased both the speed and the distance of the ball. That is definitely a positive development. He still has plays where he sets using only his wrists, but now it looks more like an old habit than a necessary technical option that will remain a major part of his game in the long run. Of course, it is great to see a young setter improving and correcting his mistakes right in the middle of a tournament. But we also have to think about the hitters, who are playing with someone whose setting technique is constantly evolving. They also need to adjust their approach patterns, timing and positioning underneath the ball. I do not know how all of this will work during the third week or at the European Championship, but I am convinced that these changes will benefit Nikolov. Compared to last year, Moni has become much more consistent with the tempo of his sets, and that is extremely important. In my opinion, tempo is even more important than accuracy. Obviously, at the highest level, you ideally need both, but if I had to choose which one to prioritize, I would choose tempo. This is clearly not the video for a detailed discussion on that topic, so I will simply leave that thought here. The tempo has become more consistent, but the quality of his sets still leaves a lot to be desired. I would not rule out Bulgaria developing good chemistry by the European Championship, but right now there are still plenty of rough edges in their game. During a match, try watching only the hitters. You will notice that there are not many situations where a player can take a comfortable approach and really crush the ball. Instead of focusing on reading the opponent's block and defense, the attackers constantly have to think about how they are going to get underneath the set properly. And no, I am not cherry-picking isolated plays and taking them out of context. There really are a lot of situations like this in Bulgaria's matches right now. I would be very interested to see how all of this worked with Lokomotiv, but unfortunately, I do not have access to the technical footage from the Russian Super League. I would really love to break down many other players from that league as well. Yes, Nikolov is only 19 and I understand that perfectly well. I am simply talking about what I see, nothing more. Moni's game is being praised so heavily right now that I wanted to add a little realism to the overall picture, just like I did in my Nishida breakdown a while ago. And there will definitely be comments saying, "You are just jealous of him," or "Who are you to analyze his game?" Here is a little spoiler. I will reply to those comments with one word: yes. Right now, Nikolov is doing an excellent job of disguising his sets. It disrupts the blocker's focus and they are often forced to guess where the ball is going. That is why players in zones 2 and 1 regularly end up facing either a single block or no block at all, even when the target is someone as obvious as Alex Nikolov. Once consistent quality is added to those ideas, the result is going to be something completely insane. I'm sure Nikolov will have far more opportunities to improve in Italy than he did in Russia or even with the national team. The main problem with the Russian league is that the packed schedule and the huge amount of traveling leave almost no time for proper training. For a young player, a high-quality training process is especially valuable right now. Shorter trips, a consistent time zone and more time on the practice court could have a great effect on the Bulgarian setter, provided of course that he makes full use of those resources. One part of his game that is already working at an excellent level is his blocking. Opposing hitters usually try to avoid making contact with Moni at the net. Coaches of the opposing teams talk about this as well, specifically reminding their players about it during timeouts. There is not much else to say here. Just look at how massive Nikolov's block looks from a standing jump next to Bulgaria's already fairly big middle blockers. It is genuinely intimidating. His physical tools allow him to be effective not only in his own blocking zone but also to occasionally help his teammates in their areas of responsibility. I would only add that he should focus a little more on penetrating his hands over the net rather than trying to reach the maximum possible jump height. There are not many hitters in the world who attack near the very top of the antenna. In most cases, it makes more sense to close the distance to the ball and narrow the attacking lane. Considering that Moni often blocks without an approach, he simply needs to control his position in the air and understand exactly where he needs to press his hands over the net. Naturally, we also have to talk about his serve. His ridiculous destructive power makes Nikolov an extremely dangerous server. There has not been any extraordinary progress in this area so far. Unlike in college volleyball, analysts at the professional level know exactly what they are doing. There are also plenty of high-quality passers, especially on the top teams. On top of that, with the current interpretation of the rotation rules, receivers can start switching positions as soon as the server begins his serving motion. This makes it easier to place the best passers in the necessary areas. Moni mostly serves into Zone 1, occasionally switching to Zone 6. The main problem for the receivers is that his serve can travel at more than 120 km per hour. Basically, Nikolov, much like Leon, does not offer a ridiculous amount of variety or some unbelievable ball trajectory. He is simply capable of destroying the reception with raw direct power. At the same time, Nikolov puts side spin on the ball. However, because he usually serves into Zone 1, that spin loses most of its practical value. If he moved his toss towards Zone 5 and served in that direction as well, the spin could give the ball a more difficult trajectory. With his current serving direction, the side spin barely changes anything. It is a good thing I did not rush this breakdown and release it immediately after the first week. Back then, the Bulgarian setter was making a ridiculous number of errors. It looks like one of the reasons was insufficient recovery after a demanding season in Russia, as well as the switch to a different ball. By the second week, his serve had already become more aggressive and, much more importantly, more consistent. He could follow Leon's approach and serve at full power every single time, but I think that if Moni wants to become the ultimate serving machine, he needs a plan B for the days when his power serve is not working. Every player has days like that. That is why his hybrid float serves are quite interesting. He does not use them very often, but they could become an excellent addition to his already powerful serve. One area where Nikolov has made major progress is defense. He has become much more coordinated and reads what is happening on the court much better. As a result, the setter often gets more defensive touches than anyone else on his team. He has also learned to use his physical attributes extremely well. Thanks to his height and arm length, he regularly reaches balls that opponents try to tip over the block. So he is capable of anchoring the defense not only at the net with his blocking, but also in the back row, where he can be an extremely productive player. To wrap things up, I want to speak directly to those who are going to write, come on, you are expecting way too much from him. He is only 19. The fact that he is only 19 is exactly what amazes me. He has enormous room for growth, and watching a player like this develop is genuinely fascinating. His game can change dramatically over a very short period, and every new tournament adds something new to it. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown and will support it with a like. Let me know in the comments how you rate Moni Nikolov's game right now, and whether you think he has a chance to become the best setter in the world over the next few years. I will be happy to read your opinions. And as always, this was Nick. Love what you do and you will definitely succeed. See you soon. Bye.